Hey everyone, welcome to the 2025 Pittsburgh District Championships. I'm Dan.
And I'm Colin, and we're looking at round 2 here. We have Imjorman on Precision Design versus SebastianK on Zahya.
Absolutely. Imjorman is an Ohio-based player who I think has got back to the game more recently. Really grateful he traveled out. And on the right with SebastianK, I believe he traveled up from around representing Virginia.
Yeah. Looking at the hands here, we have Zahya and Precision Design installing icing up the two central servers, pretty standard, especially against Zahya to protect both R&D and HQ very early to make sure you can't get those free runs, get those free credits. And then it looked like it was a spin doctor installed there. And unless I'm mistaken, right in the hand there, we can also see a Your Digital Life. This archetype had kind of fallen out of favor, but the Precision Design, Your Digital Life, just draw a million cards, make $1 million with Midnight Free Arcology, that, if I'm remembering properly, Man in the Moon put together, was very popular for a little while going into Worlds.
That's correct, the Shoot the Moon archetype. And right there, SebK is face-checking to the Gatekeeper. That kind of only feeds into this deck's game plan, where you want to have a ton of cards in hand, use Your Digital Life to gain a lot of money, and then do things like Big Deal Out.
Absolutely. We see shuffling back a full art off-world office. SebK bouncing there off of the Gatekeeper. Good to get that out of the way early. Like if there's any ice that you want to have out of the way here, or you can get out of the way that you want to know about early, it is certainly a Gatekeeper. Now running the remote, it's a Spin Doctor, getting even more cards in hand, so that Your Digital Life, which gains costs 2 but gains you money equal to the number of cards in your hand, will be even juicier here.
Now, Zahya versus PD feels like a staple matchup. It's not always.
I was gonna say it's like a canonical. It's kind of a canonical matchup, right? Like if you're playing just plain old System Gateway, those are like the decks.
Absolutely, and I feel like that Criminal often feels like they have an edge over the speed and efficiency of HB because they can do things like play an inside job to get past your Gatekeeper. They can stop some of those like immediate pushes and threaten things like diversion of funds. Do you think that kind of skew towards the runner sticks around with this archetype of PD, Shoot the Moon?
I think it still does, though to a lesser extent. The main reason why it's really effective is just because you force them into spending a lot of resources defending centrals early, and of all the decks that really doesn't want to do that, Precision Design is pretty dang high on that list. But being able to bounce back so hard with Your Digital Life definitely takes a little bit of the sting out of having to deploy ice to your centrals early. So the Criminal, early push, early aggression is a little bit less effective here, but not entirely mitigated.
We see Imjorman install a card in the remote server, and he seems to be deciding on whether or not to install an ice to protect it, and I think the only ice he seems to have in hand is a Brawn. Which, while quite strong, it can be a really expensive res that I have a feeling SebK is going to at least try and push and punish. We'll see whether that happens, with SebK first taking the turn with a Class Act draw. Just some econ
If it is a Brawn here, I think it's pretty reasonable to just run turn 1 or click 1 and click through it. Even if you just click through the end the run subroutines, after paying 6 to res it and it looks like it was in fact a Brawn, I think just clicking through the 2 there and then making Imjorman spend even more money to install another ice and then res another ice there. Well, he'd spend money to install, but spend more money to res to protect this Rashida or Agenda or whatever's being pushed here is pretty strong. Especially since you're getting paid credit to do it with Bravado.
Bravado giving you that, near full refund on the run here, I think is a massive power swing. We'll see if Imjorman is going to decide to actually install. I think I saw a drafter in hand. That would be an interesting way to punish, but putting yourself all the way down on 0 credits, even for a deck that can bounce back with YDL, is probably not a smart move.
Yeah, getting the YDL back to hand here would feel pretty good. Let's see here. What is SebastianK breaking? Looks like just breaking the install and bouncing. Now Pinhole, there's the punish. Yep, Rashida is gone. Interestingly, Pinhole on R&D here would count for Zahya's ability.
Oh, that's interesting, because you're making a run on HQ or
Yeah,
R&D.
it is a card accessed during a run on R&D, technically speaking.
I've seen some similar tricks pulled with Chesvi to Pinhole archives and use the money there for trashing cards.
Yeah, absolutely. We go see install. I didn't quite see what the first click there was.
I saw that the mandatory draw on Imjorman's side was an Analytic Void, and I'm not seeing it in the hand anymore, so I think that could be the defensive upgrade that's currently in the remote, and so we'll have to see if that's a Rashida or something else. I don't think I saw a lot of agendas in hand, but with at least one Seamless, this could be an easy way to push.
Mm-hmm.
With SebK thinking about his turn, at this tournament in particular, I felt a switch in the meta regarding Criminal. More and more folks seem to be playing the faction and relying on some Netrunner fundamentals to put them pretty far as tournaments are going, which is strange for the faction that I think most had considered to be the weakest of the current meta.
Yeah, for sure. Just playing strong fundamentals. I had talked to SebK during the tournament, and this is very similar, if not identical, to White Blade's Getting Away With It list. And so this is just very solid, very fundamental Zahya. Not even playing Diversion of Funds, though maybe Seb put it in. But just getting in. Up there is the inside job. Let's see if this forces a res here. Is this click 1? Or I think the first click was the class act draw. If he already had it in hand, you can always inside job first, bounce with the Anoetic, and then just run and click through the 2 and the run subs, let the install happen, and then on 1 credit there's no res. But he's not going to have clicks to do that, though he could install Boomerang and run. Which I think we saw one of the alt art boomerangs in hand. So depending on the money situation, this could still be challenged.
Definitely. I mean, even forcing the corporation down to 1 credit is potentially enough of a punish to make that inside job feel worth it. If you have 2 Seamlesses in hand, then it's, I think, quite easy to click for a credit, Seamless, and get back up in the money with Offworld. But that's only if that's the card that's actually installed.
For sure. Also, on 1 credit, you're not rezzing that ice on R&D, so... Oh, here we go again. Yep, there is the Boomerang and run. Break. The first sub fires. Let's see if we have a install here. I would guess you probably do. You want to get whatever you can for later on this server. You want to make it harder to inside job later, make it harder to Boomerang later. No res, can't Anoetic, and it is another Rashida. There's a trash on the Rashida, and I would assume a trash on the Void. Yep, it's gone. Getting that out of the way this early is huge. Anoetic Void is one of the hardest cards to deal with, especially when the Corp has a little bit of money. So this is one of the very few windows where you could possibly deal with it without a pinhole.
Absolutely.
Remembering properly, White Blade's list does include 2 pinholes, so eventually you might be able to find another to deal with the Void, but
that's a big if.
Being able to deal with it now is huge.
That's a big if, especially with 1 in the bid. Both sides on lower money, but I think the runner's in the advantage here.
For sure, especially having just killed the second Rashida. Stopping one Rashida push is obviously big, but stopping two can really put a hamper on all of the tempo. Looks like just credit, and draw, probably. SebastianK with another class act trigger here.
Looking at the faction makeup for this tournament, Shaper was the most prevalent one by far, at about 47%, nearly half the field. The next largest is actually Criminal, at 26% to Anarch's 21%. So a little more than a quarter of the field is Criminal. But with so many folks worried about a couple different Anarch decks, it was surprising on the day to not see very many of them at all.
Yeah, for sure. Anarch has been, maybe not the boogeyman, but at least a little bit worrying since the most recent ban list with the Cree Charm lists and with Mulch type list. I know the King was playing a Mulch type Hoshiko. Had to Oracle for it, a lot of triggers. I don't think I missed any, but you never know. We see install in the remote, take a credit, and install in a new remote, perhaps another Spin Doctor. Nope, just a naked Rashida on board. You love to see it.
Wow.
On SebastianK's turn, looks like it was install Hermes and get down a Earthwise Hotel.
And I think also I missed when the daily cast was installed, but it makes sense that with the corp down so low that you could take an off turn to set up. But just like that, PD is back in the race with the bold and cheater stall and the seamless into off-world.
Yeah, that was very good. Huge bounce back here. Trying to discard the agenda. I have certainly done that. And then the PD trigger, getting back a face down card, looks like it was a seamless, and a bounce back to hand with Hermes on R&D.
Looks like that was a gatekeeper protecting R&D, which isn't a bad place to have it, but might be nice to have instead to force.
Yeah, I don't think you're too torn up about being able to put that either on the remote or even on HQ if you think that you can draw hard enough to protect HQ. You think the agendas are safer in HQ than they would be in R&D, especially since you've already designated one gatekeeper, or already used one gatekeeper to guard HQ.
Certainly, and with a deck like this, you want them to face check the gatekeepers, power up your YDLs, help you draw into your combo pieces. And when Imjorman was nearly broke just a few turns ago, he's starting to threaten enough money where a big deal isn't too far off the prospect.
There's a run on R&D, stealing Midnight Fearology, bouncing the remote ice back to hand that was behind the bronze.
We'll say that was a Hagen.
Hagen is a interesting ice here. Probably not going to do too much with the kill a program sub. This list doesn't usually run Amakua. It runs a couple Shezvas, but you're not... Like, if you snipe a Shezva, you're probably pretty happy, but it's not going to win you the game. Install SebastianK here, installing another daily casts, getting plenty of money. Going a little bit low for that, but at this point, you just have to keep up enough pressure that the Corp can't do whatever they want while you wait for those extra cards and credits to trickle in.
Starting your next turn with 4 credits and 2 cards drawn, 3 if you count the Class Act filtering, is a pretty strong start to any turn. For sure.
Unfortunately, no, Your Digital Life here, first click from Imjorman. A lot of cards in hand. Wait, is that like Your Digital Life in hand? No, that was a Spin Doctor.
It's like another Spin Doctor. I wonder if you would try spinning some cards back. You could throw a YDL back to hand and then RLC, or just go for the RLC straight up. It's important to keep some of the cards you really, really want in archives so that you can take them back on the agenda scores using Precision Design's ability.
For sure. Red level clearance really does do a lot of work in this particular build, just because when you draw up so much, being able to spend a card to get 2 more cards out of your hand, one with the click, one with the install, really lets you actually go down to a sensible hand size. The other reason to play this in this PD, or out of PD rather, is just that +1 hand size from PD. So despite drawing so many cards, you really don't end up discarding too often or too much.
We see Imjorman install a Spin Doctor into the remote server, probably looking to trigger a run and potentially force SebastianK to burn some resources, and we'll see what kind of tricks that he has up his sleeve. But I'm curious to see what else he's going to do on this turn, whether a Managram goes in or if that's it.
If you're Imjorman here and SebastianK runs the remote server, do you res?
That's a good question. I didn't catch what the outermost ice is. If it's a gatekeeper, I wouldn't waste it on a bluff. But if it's something taxing like an MIC or even a drafter, I certainly would.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
I know I saw
because
drafter in hand earlier, but I would guess that it's probably on R&D now.
And perhaps it's the Hagen on the remote server as just another hard end the run. Another reason to consider resing would be Hermes. Just denying another target can help.
The last thing you want is to have some big multi-access run on R&D and then getting your remote, your only other remote ice bounced, and then you get the second inside job and you lose everything right there and then. Speaking of multi-access for R&D and HQ, the twinning was just installed and then charged with a Paladin counter.
Installing a Shibboleth here will let SebastianK break through the drafters easily and look if there's a run on HQ as we speak.
Yeah, getting in through the gatekeeper there, Shibboleth. Interesting icebreaker, obviously better early than late, but it's going to get you through a empty gatekeeper, used gatekeeper, during any point in the game. Getting the second access here for 2 Zahya bucks. We see a drafter and a seamless launch in hand, exactly what you'd expect to see from Precision Design.
Absolutely. I've been a fan of Shibboleth. I feel like Criminal can benefit so much from early aggression that it feels good to have that be on your side at the very beginning. But trying to play a late game with something like Shibboleth without any strength boosting can be pretty painful. But you can rely on things like Boomerang, which always comes back.
Mm-hmm. And I just don't feel like there's too many better options. Like, the only sensible other option I feel like is Unity, but lists like this are very tight on influence. 2 Paladin, 2 Twinnings, and 3 Zahya bans. Zahya bans are super important to take advantage of your Shezva, and also be able to fight assets and a bunch of other things. Being able to help people keep tags down. You need the Twinnings in this deck, and then I think one of the Paladins can potentially be a Mystic Mamie, but then you got to find an extra slot to fit the last influence in, a Pretty Mary maybe. It's just hard. It doesn't fit well, and you definitely don't clear up 2 influence to be able to play something like Unity here. So I think while Shibboleth is good, it's fine, it's certainly serviceable. Cat's Cradle is your only other option, and I don't think is as good. I just don't think you have the influence in Criminal here, which is always the Criminal problem, right?
Absolutely. I mean, you see some of the backbone of this Zahya deck are neutral cards with Earthrise and Class Act. Then the influence is used for your haymakers like Twinning or a real big value engine in Paladin. It doesn't leave you with very much at all. But speaking of haymakers, we see Imjorman pop the Spin Doctor, res the new one, fire the YDL.
Let's see how many credits this is. That looks like, I think, 8 cards in hand, so 6 credits swing, and the second YDL. Oh, that's so much. So that's another 6 credits there. Is that a stack of 3 5s? That is wild. Up to 21 credits. All right. On SebastianK's side, we have Earthrise. We have the daily casts taking down. One of them just emptied. The Earthrise just emptied. Did not see what was bottomed there. In hand, it looks like there is a Carmen. So we can have the full breaker speed down. In terms of money, Imjorman is in really good shape here and can potentially just big deal out anything that needs to be scored. But getting that last score, then I don't know if you necessarily want to do a big deal score mid game, and if you want to just save it for an Ikawa to close out.
Some of these Shoot the Moon lists will include 2 big deals. I think the original was on 1, but many other versions went to 2. And I also know that some folks were playing a spare Biotic Labor inside of PD lists to help with that final push, but that would only work if you have 3 2s in the deck, which I'm not sure that this one does. I honestly am worried that, at least if I were Imjorman, I'm happy about the credit totals, but without agendas that I'm currently pushing, it feels like SebastianK is building a lot of steam, and will be able to take on most remote pushes unless he can get some defensive upgrades put down.
For sure, losing that Anoetic, that's going to be one of the things that I shuffled back pretty early here. We've already seen one Spin Doctor, and I think it was shuffled back along with the YDL. The one nice thing about the Shoot the Moon list is your ability to break R&D lock is just huge. Being able to just draw so many cards, and it doesn't matter how many they saw, you can see more, and so you're able to get those kind of that deterministic lock on R&D. Don't dig yourself out from that. Hold your agenda slightly more safely in hand, where at least they have to actually access enough cards in hand over and over to see it, rather than deterministically one down each time.
The twinning will make that job a little easier. It's probably the primary HQ multi-access. I'm not sure if this list makes room for a Docklands Pass.
I think it has 2 Docklands passes, actually.
Oh, wow, okay. Keeping that pressure up.
Yeah, I think it's 2 Docklands and 1 Wake, if I'm remembering properly.
That is definitely some Central's pressure. But when you're holding 6 cards in hand, when you're holding 9 cards in hand, you can certainly hold your breath and hope that the 1 or 2 agendas aren't sniped. Though I think I've noticed that Imjorman has not really been drawing many agendas at all. If we look at his hand, it seems to mostly be operations, upgrades, maybe a stray ice or 2.
Yeah, this R&D is looking very juicy here. And I think that is a... Okay, we have a run on HQ with Bravado, spending the 2 credits from Shezva to get in. We're going to see 2 cards here. Going to make 7 plus $2 back with Zahya. Actually, only see 1 card, so getting 8 credits back. That's a huge credit swing. That's just the power... partially of Bravado, which is a great card, but also Zahya, just getting paid to do the thing Netrunner wants you to do, touch cards, see cards, just feels really good to play. Zahya is my favorite criminal ID.
I am a bit more of a Ken guy. I love that extra influence. I love playing a million run events, but Zahya seeing a ton of cards with the twinning and with Wake, bouncing everything from Hermes, that can feel good.
We have a overwrite of the Spin Doctor rather than just popping the other one. We'll probably see a shuffling of that Spin Doctor back along with something else. Still not seeing any agendas in hand, which I'm sure you're not thrilled about if you're Imjorman here.
That would have me sweating, and I would definitely start throwing things into the remote, seeing if I can bait any run.
Any run here. Any run. Put 2 Skunkworks in there. Put a Skunkworks and a Tranquility down just to get Seb to run it. Get Sebastian to run it. Make him spend some of his money that's just piling up so that it doesn't all go towards the R&D where all of those agendas are just sitting. Because they're certainly not in your hand.
Exactly. I don't think this game is going to stay 2-2 for very much longer.
Absolutely, and we see it looks like that right now. Install Tranquility. Thinks about Resing the Tranquility. It doesn't work to install it there, and then it looked like a Skunk Works right next to it. So looks like an agenda push here. If you're SebastianK, do you buy this?
I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, you're trying to calculate all the threats. How bad could this be if it is an agenda push? But because this turn took a long time to think through and actually place down, and with the Spin Doctor you know that the corporation is digging, I could understand the decision to just ignore this. Force the run on R&D, and then especially with Hermes, you can actually do 2 birds with 1 stone. If you hit an agenda, you can bounce whichever one you think is more important, or maybe even just go in for the other after, maybe you bounce the Mana Garm instead.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? What do you think? Would you bite?
I don't think. I think I'm in the same boat as you. Just try to run R&D, see a couple cards, especially with the third twinning or the second twinning counter.
Yeah, I mean, you'll use Chesla counters to get in. You'll force the corporation to spend money. You'll gain 3 credits back with the twinning. It feels like that's your direct game plan. But when you think about things like the tax from Mana Garm doing 5 credits for 2 clicks, as well as Ikawa, you know, not targeting the remote on your first click can be a mistake.
Yeah. I think the other thing to consider here, the reason to strongly consider checking the remote is just because if there is another push here, if this is another agenda scored out, you're now on game point, and Imjorman has money in the bank to push out the Ikawa with a big deal pretty quickly here.
That's a great point, especially if the agenda that is theoretically being pushed is a midnight, because it would let you draw so many cards and draw into whatever else you need. Now, we saw SebastianK make a run on Archives and then get down Carmen, and
just
now
to
make
not
a
lose
run on
Drafter.
R&D.
Yep, just to not lose the Drafter. It was a Hagen there. There is the counters. That was a Gatekeeper. I'm pretty sure what the second one was, and then a steal of the other Midnight 3. Gaining some $3 here from Zahya, and a Paladin dollar.
There should also probably be a Kurupira counter. It's not the end of the world to miss, but those can matter a lot in saving you money bypassing a Brawn.
Absolutely. That is, it's 5 plus, yep, see, there's the next Kurupira counter. It's 5 plus 3, it's 8 to break a Brawn. Saving 8 credits is really nice. How much is Hagen to give you?
Well, right now with 3 breakers, Hagen I think is only at 3 strength. So
4 credits.
4 credits if you want to break everything.
Yeah, and you want to keep your Chesva. So with your Chesva, you're only paying 2 real credits. You're refunding those anyways. With Twinning and Zahya, even with only 1 counter, you break even on the run.
Now we saw SebastianK bounce one of the cards in the remote. Some interesting mind games there as to which one gets bounced and when, and then it's much harder to read what the corporation is actually trying to do on that turn, since there isn't most likely going to be a res or any kind of advancement on the turn. So you could read that as an agenda in HQ and just force the push again. But if you keep...
They were both installed on the same turn, so I don't think there's any real way to know which... I think you just have to take the 50-50 there, right?
Definitely. And I think some players are better than others at disguising which card is which, or mixing up. I know I tend to have a habit of installing my upgrade second, and then I try to correct for that, which means I end up installing them most first. It can sometimes be best to just shuffle the 2 cards you're installing.
Yep, just shuffle them, put them down flip over your last 2 counters. My favorite is with the sports medal. You go install, just set 3 cards down on the table, shuffle them, and lay them out.
We see Imjorman put what looked like the Mana Garm back down. So it's still Tranquility and Mana Garm in the remote. See if it can bait a run from SebastianK. I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, yep. And there's the other piece of ice there. Especially since with no twinning counters currently on the board, I wouldn't be shocked if this is a turn to go and check. that remote.
So just making him have it, saying, "Yep, come run the remote. Gonna have to check what's in here, or I'm going to be on game point." It's pretty scary.
It's a little less scary. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I think the biggest concern for this deck for me is scoring out a Midnight 7. And so having 2 of them out of the game already is a huge plus, because it's that Midnight 7 score out into Lord of Life that I think really powers up this deck. If Imjorman is forced to actually res all the ice he has bluffing the remote, it might put him out of big deal range, which could be a problem.
For sure. We have a Zahya bands here. I think that's the World's Alt Art.
Oh, that's a beautiful alt art.
I did not see what server was on. There was no hand chop.
It looks like an archive room and just not shuffling the Spin Doctor.
So there is a class act draw.
I'm surprised that's not just an HQ run, just to check and gain $1.
Yeah, it's. Is it? Or was it? You said this was an archives run.
This is an archives run. But I'm just a little surprised.
Installing. And then installing. Is that a dock?
That's Dockland. Is that also, I think, World Surprising?
I think so. I don't know if that was from. I don't think that was this year, but let's see here. Also installing. There is a Wake implant. Charges up the more you run HQ, and then you get to see 1 card for each counter you spend, much like the twinning. It does combine with the twinning. You can spend both at the same time. And spending those credit. Here is the HQ run. We see Dawkins pass, not spending a twinning counter.
This explains why that run was on Archives and not HQ, because he would have missed. Well, I'm not sure if he would have missed the trigger for Dawkins pass, but just making sure that he'd have a chance to get it down, and then getting the most.
I'm pretty sure it would miss the trigger because it is the Zahya Bands is on success, and so the game will have already seen the success trigger and not give you it off of the Wake, or not give it to you for Wake.
That makes sense. I mean, so far we've seen some pretty expert piloting from SebastianK here. He's built a really solid board, consistently managed resources, and I want to give him a shout out because he, in 2023, placed 14th at the World Championships. So certainly a fearsome player showing up at the District Championships.
Absolutely, and a great deck builder too. I love the Venti Ob, the giant list that sits there and looks intimidating and then kills you out of nowhere. Well, not out of nowhere. You see the giant server of cards building up, but difficult to play around, difficult to play against, and just super cool. It's one of those decks that makes you really appreciate what a card game like Netrunner can be when you push, the bounds of deck building.
Absolutely, even though it's terrifying to run against.
Oh, for sure. You feel like you're not accessing anything. You feel like you never see any cards that matter until it does matter. And of course, running that one giant remote that's got 14 installed cards, and if you want it, you're taking 10 tags and having to pay $1 trillion to trash everything with Warroids. It's a nightmare.
SebastianK actually, one of the first things he said to me on this tournament day is that he had a grudge to keep. He had a score to settle, because the last time that he and I played, I actually snuck a game from his Venti Ob with World Tree Ari back at, I think it was East Coast Nats in Boston. But we didn't get to play on the day, so we didn't get to settle the score, and the grudge match lives on.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, next time I can.
Looks like we have install it. Looks like we have install advance from Imjorman here, being able to push out. now, obviously, if you're SebastianK, you think, yeah, that's probably an agenda there. It also gives you the target to hit whenever you steal an agenda with Hermes. And with being able to see 5 cards on an R&D run, that's very likely to hit an agenda, being able to bounce the other card back to hand.
Definitely. I think it puts Imjorman in a really difficult place. But it's been so long since he's actually seen an agenda that I think he has to push now. And he did something really cool in the remote server. He decided not to res a Tranquility home grid for that additional value, instead threatening that it's probably an Analytic Void and a Void Managarm combo, which changes the calculus for SebastianK on whether he can run it, what kind of resources he can or should spend.
Absolutely. Bluffing the Anoetic is good there. And even if you're not bluffing the Anoetic, at very least, you don't know what to bounce back to hand. Well, I guess you bounce the agenda back to hand. So yeah, the Anoetic bluff certainly works there.
But you're right, it plays games with Pinhole too. If you run Archives with Pinhole, trying to get rid of a Managarm or an Analytic, and you instead hit a Tranquility home grid, that would be a huge bummer and a missed opportunity.
For sure. We have another run on HQ here, it looks like. Getting the 3rd Wake counter, another Zahya bans, even more, and $4 to trash something. Big deal would be a nice thing to trash here with those Zahya bans dollars. And then I missed what click this was. Looks like a inside job on R&D. Yep.
Oh wow, that's probably Gatekeeper respect. He's got a decent amount of money for the run, but Gatekeeper would be the one thing to probably keep him out with Shibboleth now that we're on threat 4.
Alright, seeing 6 cards here. There's a Seamless, there's something, there's
Greasing Palm.
Greasing, there is an Ice, there's another Ice, and there is finally the agenda.
Wow.
And that is the Project Ikawa ending the game. That was concerning there with seeing the last card being the agenda. The deck absolutely did not want to cough up agendas to either player that entire game.
Not at all, and taking his time to make those extra runs on HQ, build up the weight counter as much as possible for the deepest dig on R&D, paid some dividends and closed the game for SebastianK. Really well played by both players, and I want to thank you all for joining us for round 2 of the 2025 Pittsburgh District Championships. But before we go, I want to invite all of you to join us this June for the Pittsburgh Megacity.
Absolutely. This is going to be a great tournament. It's also going to be at Game Masters, the same place that this tournament was at. Really lovely venue with a cafe. Just a great game store. It's going to be June 14th and 15th. Come and book your flights, book your hotels. This is going to be one of the few mega cities that is on this side of the country. So we really hope to see you there.
Thanks so much.